Incredible twist, billionaire ex-husband discovers heartwarming pregnancy of divorced wife a year after leaving her for fortune. The crisp autumn air slapped Sarah's cheeks as she stood outside the Maplewood diner, the familiar scent of pancakes and coffee swirling around her like an old friend. Families bustled, children laughed, and the busy streets were filled with a bittersweet laughter, a sound Sarah both loved and longed for. For 5 years, her life spiraled around a simple mantra: hard work means hope. But sometimes that hope felt like a fleeting shadow, especially on days like this. Ethan bounced beside her, excitement radiating off him like sunshine. "Can I have a dad?" he blurted out during breakfast, his innocent blue eyes wide. The school had announced a father-son event, and Sarah's heart sank like a stone. It was a reminder of a shattered dream, a hint of what could have been. Greg, her ex-husband, had traded their joyful home for skyscrapers and bank accounts. But this was about Ethan. He deserved more. Moments later, news crashed back into their lives like thunder. Greg had decided to attend the event, drawn by guilt and possibly curiosity. She stood frozen, her heart racing not just from fear but also from lingering anger. How could he strut back in town, cloaked in cashmere and privilege, acting as though he just skipped town for a longer business trip? He didn't know their world anymore. When he arrived, the clouds of nostalgia and chaos danced above. Conversations hurried and awkward, old wounds reopened like scar tissue peeling away. "You look, well," Greg murmured, his tone laced with feigned congeniality. Sarah met his gaze with a mix of defiance and longing, the way the autumn leaves fluttered around them. The diner buzzed with whispers and glances, eyes darting between the estranged couple. She felt that judgment, like small darts striking her heart, just as awkward silence threatened to consume them. She felt the flutter in her belly, the spark of new life. She had been pregnant again, something no one knew yet. "I'm having another baby," she announced abruptly, the words hanging in the air like a thunderclap. Greg's face paled, disbelief washed over him. What once was a home was now just a ghost. Before the moment could deepen, an unexpected storm erupted. Ethan clutched his belly, gasping for air. Panic surged as Sarah's heart plummeted. Nothing else mattered. Stripped of titles and wealth, they scrambled to the hospital. In the sterile chaos, their barriers began to break. Anxieties bled into each other, woven through a common thread as parents. "Is he going to be all right?" Sarah's voice trembled as she gripped Greg's arm, raw fear merging with desperation. Greg's usual arrogance melted away, replaced with something real, vulnerable. "We'll figure this out," he said with an urgency that rang truer than anything he had ever promised in their years together. In that moment, they were connected. Old hurts, misunderstandings, even love swirled together. "Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen." Now let's continue. As they remained huddled together in the waiting room, the hum of fluorescent lights above, they shared memories, each story both a bomb and a blade. They were cracked but not broken, forced to confront what family truly meant while their son fought for health, against unseen battles. Was love enough to mend the fractures they'd created? With hope flickering like a candle in the darkened room, Sarah and Greg held their breath, grappling with the possibility of a shared future. The weight of their past pressed heavily upon them, but it coexisted with the fragile tendrils of hope that intertwined their hearts anew. Would this unexpected twist lead them to redemption, or would they remain eternally scarred by choices long made? The air in the waiting room felt thick, almost suffocating. Each tick of the clock seemed to echo louder than the last, as if time itself was measuring the weight of their unspoken hopes and fears. Sarah clutched her stomach instinctively, the soft undulation reminding her that a new life was forming, against all odds. She wondered if this child would bring them together or simply widen the already gaping chasm between them. Ethan remained on the hospital bed, eyes wide and trembling. The doctors had taken him away, leaving Sarah and Greg in a silence punctuated only by sterile sounds drifting through the hallways, machines steadily beeping, footsteps hurriedly passing. It felt like a dream, or rather a nightmare, where reality and memories melded together into one tumultuous wave. "Did you really mean what you said?" Greg's voice broke through, barely above a whisper. Sarah turned to him, searching his expression. Was that genuine concern she saw in his eyes, or just a fleeting glimpse of the man she once knew? "About the baby?" he clarified, his brow furrowing. A rush of emotions surged in her chest: fear, joy, resentment. "Yes," she replied, unsure what exactly she felt. "But now isn't the time to Sarah, please," he interrupted, the urgency clear in his tone. His hand reached out, but he stopped short. I want to know how you've been. Why didn't you tell me sooner?" "Tell you what?" "That you'd left me? That you chose money over family?" The words spilled out, laced with years of hurt. "I didn't choose that life over you," he said, desperation creeping into his voice. "You know that." "Do I?" The anger bubbled just under the surface, threatening to overflow. Just then, the doctor emerged, clad in scrubs that seemed too big for him. He approached with a measured step. "Ethan is stable," he began, his voice even but gentle. "We've prescribed some treatment, and he's responding well." Relief washed over them both like a flood. In that brief instant, all animosities fell away, replaced by a single, shared hope. Sarah's heart swelled as tears pricked her eyes, and she felt Greg's arm brush against her in a gesture she hadn't expected. "Can we see him?" she asked, her voice softer now. "Of course," the doctor replied, leading them through the bustling corridors until they reached Ethan's room. It was lined with cheerful drawings, hastily created masterpieces from other children, each one a splash of color against the stark white walls. Ethan lay there, a little pale but unmistakably alive, eyes flickering open as he grasped for understanding. "Mom? Dad?" he asked, his voice fragile yet filled with hope. "We're right here, buddy," Greg said, stepping closer to the bed, a shadow of vulnerability flickering across his face. Sarah watched the two, her heart thrumming with a sensation she hadn't felt in so long: affection. She saw Greg kneel beside their son, tears forming in his eyes, and felt a part of her begin to soften. Could they really find their way back? Just as the warmth expanded, a flicker of doubt surfaced. Was it enough just to be present? Could they really heal the wounds they had inflicted on each other, and could they build the life they dreamed of, now with another baby on the way? "We need to talk." Sarah broke the silence. She took a deep breath, gathering herself. "About everything." Greg's gaze trembled between her and Ethan. "Okay, let us talk." In that moment, nothing else mattered. They were a family again, if only for a heartbeat, standing on the edge of a future uncharted, with shadows of the past looming. But just as they prepared to delve into the depths of their emotions, a commotion erupted outside the door. The sound of arguing voices caught their attention. "What now?" The door swung open, revealing a figure from Sarah's past, one she never expected to see again. The air shifted, heavy with unresolved tensions. "Sarah, we need to talk." "Sarah, we need to talk." The voice pierced through the moment like a sharp knife, and Sarah felt her stomach drop. Alex stood in the doorway, a familiar silhouette she had tried so hard to put behind her. The years melted away, and in an instant, she was reminded of all the promises made, the dreams they had shared. "Why are you here?" she managed to say, her heart racing. Every barrier she had built to forget him now felt impossibly fragile. The room seemed to shrink, containing their past alongside the present uncertainty of Ethan's condition. "I heard about Ethan. I wanted to see you to help," Alec replied, taking a tentative step forward. His gaze flicked to Greg, who stood frozen, shock written all over his face. Help? Greg echoed, irritation bubbling at the edge of his words. What do you know about helping? Enough. Sarah shot back, feeling the tension between the two men thick like smoke. This isn't the time. Ethan needs us. I don't want to cause problems, Alec said, holding up his hands as if warding off conflict. But you can't pretend everything's fine, Sarah. You can't ignore what happened between us. She took a deep breath, trying to keep her emotions in check. I'm not ignoring anything. I'm trying to focus on my son right now. Ethan stirred in his bed, sensing the shift, his eyes moving from his parents to the newcomer. Mom? Dad? Who's that? His voice was quiet but laced with an innocence that tugged at Sarah's heart. Just a friend, she said, forcing a smile through the rising tide of tension. But deep down, she felt a battle raging guilt, fear, even resentment mixed with old feelings that were not entirely buried. You don't need to worry about him, Ethan. Alec took a step closer, looking genuinely pained. He deserves to know everything. The truth will come out eventually. You can't hide from it, Sarah. Sarah shook her head in disbelief. This isn't the time to bring up the past. Not when Ethan is, but she couldn't finish the sentence. Not when the fragile health of her son hung in the balance. Greg's eyes narrowed as he glared at Alec. What do you want? To guilt her further? To reopen wounds that are barely scabbing over? Alec's jaw tightened, but he remained calm. I want her to recognize the choices she has to make. Now, with another baby on the way, silence fell hard in the room. Sarah's breath hitched, and she felt the weight of the world pressing down on her shoulders. Would her history with Alec complicate everything she was trying to build with Greg? Could she truly navigate her feelings with a baby on the horizon? Ethan sat up slightly, his expression caught between confusion and concern. What baby? Sarah and Greg froze, their words stopped short. She looked at Ethan, pain flashing across her features. Ethan, sweetheart, it's nothing. But the seed of doubt had already been planted. The reality of their situation delivered a harsh reality check. Sarah knew she had to choose her next words carefully, yet her heart raced at the daunting prospects. Just as she was about to speak, another voice chimed from the hallway behind Alec. Sarah! Where are you? The door swung wider, revealing a woman whose face blended both disbelief and urgency. Sarah felt an overwhelming sense of dread pooling in her stomach as she recognized her, a figure she never thought would enter this chapter of her life. Great! Just what I need, she whispered to herself, squeezing her eyes shut. What now? Sarah wondered, feeling the ground beneath her shift into an untrustworthy landscape. Would this chance encounter pull her away from the path she was trying to navigate, or would it break open the walls she feared to breach? The tension in the room thickened, as the door stood open to an unknown future, and Sarah knew, whatever happened next, there was no turning back. The woman stepped inside, her presence bringing with it an aura of unspoken tension. Sarah recognized her instantly. Clara, Alec's sister, a woman whose laughter once felt like a warm embrace but had since turned cold and distant. The years had etched deep lines around her eyes, and the shock on her face was palpable. Sarah, is everything okay? Clara asked, her voice strained, glancing between the two men. The worry in her expression was unmistakable, but it was also laced with something darker, something that had clearly been festering beneath the surface. We were just, Sarah started, but her voice faltered. How to explain this mess? This moment of chaos that twisted her heart into knots? I came to check on Ethan, Clara interjected, her gaze growing serious. I heard about the accident. I didn't mean to interrupt Alec. Greg snapped, his voice echoing against the sterile walls of the hospital room. What did you tell her? Alec held up his hands defensively. I didn't say anything. I thought it was important she knew. With the weight of uncertainty hanging between them, Sarah's heart pounded in her chest. "Ethan is stable," she finally managed to say, hoping to bring some calm. "He is going to be fine." But her words felt hollow, like a fragile balloon bound to burst at any moment. Ethan, still sitting up but now looking more scared than anything, finally broke the tension. "Can't you all just stop? I don't want any fights." He looked at his mother, his blue eyes wide with innocence. "Can we just be a family?" The plea hit Sarah hard. She couldn't separate the past from the present. How could she reassure Ethan when the air swirled with unresolved emotions and confessions half-spoken? "Ethan, this is complicated," Sarah said gently, forcing herself to look at Alec. "Things aren't what they used to be, and Alec will always be a part of your life, whether you like it or not," Clara said, her voice rising slightly. "You two share history. It's not fair to pretend it doesn't exist. It also isn't fair to shove it in my face when my son is struggling," Sarah retorted, feeling the heat rise to her cheeks. Greg's eyes were locked on Clara, the tension between them palpable. Ethan looked from his mom to Clara and Alec, confusion etching deeper into his young features. "Why can't we all just get along? Isn't that what families do?" "Families come together when things get tough," Clara responded, her eyes softening. "And maybe it's time to set things right." Sarah felt another pang of guilt. Maybe Ethan was right. Maybe it was time, but how? She glanced at Greg, desperation flooding her heart. Of all the people involved, he was the one who truly mattered now. Would he be on board if things began to shift again? Weakness threatened to spread through her. Ethan's voice cut through her thoughts, both a plea and a command. "I don't want things to change. I need my family, too." The quiet chill of the hospital room enveloped them all again, tense and electric with unspoken promises. Clara took a deep breath, steeling herself. "You know, Sarah, what you do now could set the course for a brighter future or hold you all in this limbo indefinitely." As Sarah weighed her options, the thought of a fragile future looming ahead like an ominous storm made her stomach twist. Could she find a way to merge all these lives without the past unraveling her present? At that moment, Ethan spoke again, a hint of resolve in his voice. "If we have to talk about babies, I think we should all just do it together." Before anyone could answer, the door swung open yet again, drawing all eyes from the mounting chaos. "Sarah, you need to come with me," a nurse said urgently, her tone cutting through the tension like a knife. Heart racing, Sarah exchanged frantic glances with Greg, Clara, and Alec. "What is going on?" she demanded, a knot tightening in her throat. As the nurse turned to beckon her, a new, ominous question settled in the air: what next awaited them behind those hospital doors? The nurse's eyes were intense as she motioned for Sarah to follow her. Panic surged through Sarah, her heart hammering in her chest. "Wait. What's wrong with Ethan?" she managed to choke out, her voice barely above a whisper. She felt Greg's hand on her arm, grounding her for a moment amidst the spiraling uncertainty. "He's stable, but we need to discuss the next steps," the nurse replied, her tone crisp and professional. "It's important." The word important echoed in Sarah's mind as she shot a quick look back at Ethan. He seemed more pale than before, eyes wide with confusion and fear. She was torn. Her son needed her, yet the nurse was beckoning her into unknown territory. "Just for a minute, I promise," she whispered to Ethan, squeezing his hand tightly before turning to follow the nurse down the hallway. Every step felt heavy, like wading through deep water, each footfall echoing her mounting anxiety. They turned a corner, entering a quieter section of the hospital where the fluorescent lights buzzed softly overhead. It felt surreal, as if she were stepping out of her chaotic life and into a different world altogether. The nurse motioned for her to take a seat in a small waiting area, the kind with uncomfortable chairs and outdated magazines. "Dr. Harris will be with you shortly," she said, then left. Sarah ran her fingers through her hair, her thoughts spinning. What could possibly be so urgent? Was it about Ethan or something else? Just then, Clara and Alec appeared at the entrance, their expressions serious. What did she say? Clara asked, her voice tight with worry. I don't know, Sarah replied, the frustration rising in her throat. They're going to tell me something. Alec shifted nervously, glancing toward the door. What if it's bad news? Clara stepped closer, her eyes shimmering with concern. Let us think positive. Maybe it's just about the treatment or something routine. Before Sarah could respond, the door swung open, and Dr. Harris entered, a clipboard clutched tightly under his arm. His expression was professional but kind, and that didn't soothe Sarah's nerves at all. Sarah, he began, his voice steady, I need to discuss Ethan's condition with you. Fear coiled tighter in Sarah's gut. Is he okay? Should I prepare for the worst? What is going on? She barely let him finish, but she needed answers. Dr. Harris took a breath, his eyes locking onto hers. Ethan is stable, but he did sustain some injuries that will require careful observation and possibly additional treatments. He paused, assessing Sarah's immediate reaction. But there's something else we need to address. What is it? Sarah felt more aware of her heart racing by the second. There's a possibility that he will need a blood transfusion, he explained carefully. As a precaution. We need your permission to proceed if we determine it is necessary. The word permission lingered in the air, heavy with gravity. Sarah stared blankly at him, her thoughts a chaotic whirl. Is that all? Clara pressed, her voice trembling slightly. Is that really the reason you called her away? No, he said quietly, and Sarah felt the knot in her stomach tighten further. There's also a personal matter I need to discuss regarding Ethan's family history. Sarah blinked rapidly, confusion washing over her. The walls felt like they were closing in. Family history? What are you saying? Dr. Harris hesitated for a brief moment, a shadow of something unspoken crossing his face. It's important. You need to know about potential hereditary conditions connected to his father. The room pulsated with a deep silence. It was as if time had draped itself over them, thick and suffocating. Everything felt interconnected, past choices, futures unwritten, and the unshakable bond of family that Ethan was desperate to hold on to. His father, Sarah whispered, her breath catching. Has more to do with Ethan's health than you realize, Dr. Harris finished, his gaze piercing through her. As another revelation loomed, Sarah felt a chill crawl up her spine. What was he going to reveal, and how would it change? Everything she thought she knew. In that moment of uncertainty, fear intertwined with hope, and Sarah realized that the next word spoken might unravel everything or weave it all back together again. What truth was waiting in the balance? The words hung in the air like a fragile glass ornament, waiting for just the right moment to shatter. Sarah's breath caught in her throat, shaky and uneven. Each second stretched, a tightrope of anxiety strung just above her heart. Dr. Harris, what do you mean? She managed to ask, her voice a trembling thread of urgency. What about his father? What do I need to know? The doctor shifted uncomfortably, his eyes flickering toward Clara and Alec, as if gauging how much to reveal in front of them. It only deepened Sarah's dread. The air was thick with unspoken words. Ethan's father, his biological father, had certain health conditions, Dr. Harris finally said, breaking the silence with a hesitant tone. Conditions that can be inherited. It's crucial for us to have this information moving forward, especially regarding Ethan's current state. Sarah felt like she had been punched in the gut. What kind of conditions? The question hung ominously between them, and she felt Clara's hand squeeze her shoulder tightly. Genetic disorders. Conditions that could affect Ethan's health as he grows. Cardiovascular issues, diabetes, even certain types of cancer. Dr. Harris paused, gauging her reaction again. We need to do further testing, and I recommend getting in touch with Ethan's father for his family history. We can't make decisions without more information. The mention of Ethan's father, a figure cloaked in shadows, sliced through her like glass. Memories of their past flickered like a film reel, each frame tinged with betrayal and unfulfilled dreams. She never thought he would reemerge like this, casting a shadow over her son's well-being. Right now, Ethan needs all of us to focus on his recovery, Clara interjected firmly, her voice a steady rock in the ocean of confusion. We can deal with this later. Sarah nodded, but her heart raced with the implications swirling in her mind. Could this be the reason for Ethan's troubles? And how could she reach out to a man who had walked away? Doctor, is there any way to avoid involving his father? Sarah asked, desperation lacing her words. He hasn't been in Ethan's life, and I want to keep it that way. Dr. Harris offered an empathetic smile, but it felt too distant. I understand your concerns. But without accurate family medical history, we're flying blind. It could be a life-or-death situation for Ethan. Every word dropped like lead in her stomach. The thought of reaching out to the man she had once loved and loathed intertwined painfully. She needed to protect Ethan, yet the prospect of unearthing old wounds paralyzed her. I'll do whatever it takes for Ethan, she whispered, the strength of her resolve rising to the surface. But I'm not sure how. Dr. Harris nodded, understanding flickering in his eyes. Just make the call when you're ready. In the meantime, we can proceed with the necessary assessments based on what we have. She took a deep breath, trying to steady the whirlwind inside her. Just as she was about to respond, a flurry of commotion erupted outside the waiting area. Alarms blared, sudden and shrill, slicing through the sterile air like a knife. What's happening? Alec asked, his eyes wide with fear. Doctor Harris's expression shifted from calm to alert in an instant. Stay here, he commanded before rushing back into the chaos, leaving Sarah clutching the arms of her chair, heart racing, fear clawed at her throat. What's going on? Is Ethan okay? Clara gripped Sarah's hand tightly, their pulses matching in anxiety. They could do nothing but wait, helpless and caught in the storm of fear and uncertainty that rattled the hospital around them, and just then, the weight of the unknown hung heavier than before, a ticking clock echoing in her mind. What did the alarms mean? Was Ethan in danger again? With dread pooling in her chest, Sarah wondered if this nightmare was only beginning and if she was ready for whatever was coming next. The alarms pierced through the waiting room, each shriek stabbing at Sarah's nerves. Clara tightened her grip, her own anxiety reflected in her wide eyes. Alec fidgeted beside them, glancing between his mother and the flurry of hospital staff rushing past. Time seemed suspended, every passing second stretching into eternity. What if it's Ethan? Sarah's voice wavered, barely above a whisper. She struggled to keep the panic at bay, but dread wrapped around her like a suffocating blanket. Sarah, breathe, Clara urged, her voice steady. There's going to be a reason for this. Just stay focused. Desperate to quell her rising panic, Sarah closed her eyes for a moment, focusing on her breath. Inhale. Exhale. The rhythm tried to ground her, but images of Ethan lying in that hospital bed splintered her thoughts, fueling her worry. Then, a doctor emerged from the chaos. His face was flushed, his shirt collar slightly askew. Hello, is this the family of Ethan Turner? He called, his voice strained but firm. Sarah shot up, her heart racing. Yes. I'm his mother. What's wrong? The doctor approached cautiously, glancing at Clara and Alec, who stood protectively at her side. He's stable at the moment. We had a brief but critical event, a drop in his heart rate. We're monitoring him closely in the ICU. We suspect he may have had a reaction to one of the medications. Relief washed over Sarah, followed by a flood of anger. A reaction? Why wasn't I informed about the risks? How are we just finding this out now? I understand your frustration, the doctor said, his voice steady yet overtaken by urgency. We're looking into it and making adjustments. Your son needs to be closely monitored right now. You're welcome to see him, but be aware that he is still in a delicate state. The world around her faded as Sarah absorbed his words. She made a beeline toward the ICU, her heart thundering in her chest. Clara followed closely, taking Alec's trembling hand. As they approached the double doors, Sarah felt the warmth of family beside her, but the chill of fear permeated her skin. Once inside, she was met with a sterile environment buzzing with machines and faint beeping that sounded like the rhythm of life itself. There lay Ethan, small and fragile, surrounded by his own circle of beeping monitors. Tubes connected him to life, and the sight twisted Sarah's heart into knots. "Hey, buddy," she whispered, her voice cracking. She stepped closer, brushing her fingers against his cheek. He looked too pale, too still, and her heart plummeted. "I'm right here." His eyelids fluttered, but he didn't awaken. Sarah fought the tears threatening to spill down her cheeks. She wasn't ready to break, not now, not when he needed her strength. "It's not fair," Clara muttered, her voice a barely contained whisper. "You're doing everything. This shouldn't be happening." "There's still time," Alec piped up bravely, his innocent words hanging heavily in the air. "He's gonna wake up. He's strong, Mom." "Strong like you," Sarah murmured, wrapping an arm around her son. For a fleeting moment, despite the hospital's coldness, she felt warmth in the bond of her family. She could almost picture Ethan swinging the bat at baseball, laughing, all the moments they still needed to share together. Just then, the door swung open again, and the doctor stepped back into the room, a somber expression clouding his features. "We're going to need to talk about Ethan's father," he said, his tone serious. "We need answers, and time is of the essence." A sudden tension filled the air, thick and palpable, as his words hung heavily above them. Sarah's heart raced anew. She was running out of time to shield her boy from the shadows of his past. Would she have the courage to confront the past when her son's life depended on it? The echoes of the doctor's words felt like a punch to the gut. Ethan's father? Henry? The man who had walked away with a cold stare instead of a parting goodbye? Sarah's breath quickened, her mind racing with a flurry of emotions. "What do you mean we need to talk about Ethan's father?" Her voice came out steadier than she felt inside, but a swell of apprehension clawed at her throat. The doctor shifted on his feet, clearly caught in the web of a delicate situation. "I can't provide details without his consent. But we suspect that his medical history might be relevant to Ethan's care, specifically regarding medications or genetic factors." Clara squeezed Sarah's arm, her eyes wide with understanding. Alec, oblivious to the underlying tension, simply clutched his mother's side, his small face creased with concern. "Why now? Why didn't you bring this up earlier?" Sarah pressed, feeling backed into a corner. "We only found the need for more background information as his situation progressed. It might seem like a sudden request, but our priority is Ethan's health," the doctor explained. Turning back to her son, Sarah felt the gravity of choice pressing down on her chest. She fought hard to protect Ethan from the hurt and the chaos of Henry's departure, but now, her past loomed like a specter threatening to swallow them whole. Could she really call him? After all they had been through, after the way he had shattered her heart? What if he doesn't care? She murmured, the doubt spilling out. "Then maybe it's time to find out," Clara replied softly, her voice encouraging. "For Ethan's sake." Sarah closed her eyes, breathing in the sterile hospital air mixed with the scent of antiseptic. The thought of reaching out felt terrifying, an unraveling of threads she'd so carefully woven together. "Okay," she said finally, though her heart raced. "I'll do it. I have to know." Just then, the low beeping of the machines picked up pace. A sudden alert echoed, sending a shiver down Sarah's spine. The doctor rushed to Ethan's side, calling for a nurse. Panic flared in Sarah's chest as she took a step back, feeling completely helpless. "What's happening?" she cried, gripping Alec tightly. Just a precaution, the doctor called over his shoulder as he leaned closer to the monitors, his brow furrowing. But Sarah could see the tension in the air thickening like smoke. A nurse rushed in, hands flying as they adjusted the 4 and tapped buttons on several machines. Sarah felt lost, her heart teetering on the edge of hope and despair. Clara gently whispered, "We're here, Sarah. You're not alone." But as Sarah looked at her son, her eyes stung with tears. This wasn't just about Ethan anymore, it felt like the world was crashing around them, and she fought to stay grounded. What if reaching out to Henry put everything they had built at risk? The beeping settled back into a normal rhythm, and the doctor straightened, releasing a breath. He stabilized. "For now," he said, offering Sarah a slight nod, though his gaze still held a warning. "Mom?" Alec's small voice broke through her haze. "Is Ethan going to be okay?" Sarah crouched down to meet her son's eyes, forcing a smile despite the heaviness in her chest. "Yes. He's a fighter, just like you." As she spoke, a flicker of determination ignited within her. The road ahead was murky, and the shadows of her past lurked in the corners, but for Ethan she would do anything. With a deep breath, she thought of Henry again. And she knew there was no avoiding it any longer. In the quiet of the waiting room, she made a decision. She would call him, share their present reality and confront the promise he'd broken. Little did she know, waiting on the other end of that call was a truth that could change everything. Would she take the plunge and find out what Henry was truly willing to do for his son? The hospital waited in heavy silence. Sarah could still feel the weight of her decision pressing down as she stepped away from the room. The clang of machines mixed with hushed whispers and the smell of coffee from the waiting area painted a stark contrast to the turmoil rising inside her. She pulled out her phone, her hands shaking slightly, and glanced at Clara. "Are you sure about this?" Clara asked softly, concern etched on her face. Sarah nodded, swallowing hard. "I have to. For Ethan." With a deep breath, she punched in Henry's number. The dialing tone echoed through the quiet hall. Each ring felt like an eternity. A knot tightened in her stomach. What would she say? What would he say? Just as she considered hanging up, a voice rasped at the other end. "Hello?" It was that familiar baritone, the one she had once loved and now, surprisingly, felt a deep fear resonating from. "Henry," she began, her voice quivering like a leaf in autumn. "It's me, Sarah." "Sarah?" His surprise was palpable. "It's been a long time. What is going on?" She glanced nervously back toward Ethan's room before continuing. "It's about Ethan. There are some concerns. The doctor thinks your medical history might be important for his treatment." Silence. If she had hoped for a response, this felt like a chasm opening between them. "Is he okay?" Henry finally asked, his tone suddenly shifting, a hint of genuine concern threading through. "Yes, for now. But I need you to help us." Her heart pounded. "I think you should come in." "Come in?" His voice was tightly laced with confusion and hesitation. "Why? What do you expect from me?" "I expect you to be a father, Henry," Sarah said, her own frustration spilling over. "I never wanted to take Ethan away from you, you just walked away. But now he needs you, and he needs to know you care." Another silence enveloped the call, thick and suffocating. "Sarah, it's not that simple. You don't know what I've been dealing with." His words felt like a preemptive strike, deflecting her plea. "Then tell me. I want to understand." A deep, pained sigh resonated through the line. "I can't just show up out of the blue. I've had my reasons for staying away." "Reasons?" She scoffed, frustration burning. "You think those reasons matter right now? Your son is fighting for his life." The urge to scream seeped in. "You can't just ignore this." "I didn't mean to ignore him," he said quietly, almost defeated. But I'm not the man you think I am anymore. My life is complicated. Just then, a nurse stepped out of Ethan's room, her face taut with urgency. Sarah. We need you now. She called, and Sarah's heart raced. I have to go, she said, panic flooding her. Please, Henry. Just think about it. Wait, but she hung up, the sound of her heartbeat thrumming in her ears. She rushed back into the room, her mind reeling between the two massive forces in her life, Henry and Ethan. Mom! Alec cried, pointing at the monitors. Is it good news? I don't know yet, sweetheart, she said, forcing herself to be calm as her attention darted to the doctor, who was intently examining Ethan's chart. Each line felt like a verdict, time stretched, and as she waited for answers, something shifted within her. Henry had changed, she could hear it in his voice. Was it possible? Could he actually want to mend the pieces, or would this be yet another dead end? As the moments ticked by, questions swirled in her mind. What if reaching out only opened new wounds? What if he turned his back again? And then the doctor turned to her, his expression unreadable. We need to discuss next steps. An icy fear gripped her heart. Just how far would she have to go for Ethan's sake? She felt dizzy, balancing on the edge of hope and despair, ready to take yet another leap into uncertainty as the room began to spin around her. And in that moment, everything changed. The room was thick with anticipation, breaths held tightly as Sarah faced the doctor, a sense of dread pooling in her stomach. She could see Ethan's small body, fragile against the hospital bed, machines singing their monotonous lullaby. Would she have what it took to confront the man who had added to her burdens? What next steps? Sarah asked, her voice trembling. She needed answers, something to cling to despite the chaos surrounding her. The treatments we have in mind require precise knowledge of Ethan's family history, the doctor explained, his gaze steady. But I won't sugarcoat it. We need to contact his father, Henry. It could make a difference. Each word felt like a lead weight in her heart. Contact Henry? The man who had walked away, leaving a hole in her life and Ethan's. She didn't know if that leap would lead them to safety or further despair. Mom? Alec's small voice broke through her spiraling thoughts. He looked so small, so innocent, his eyes wide with concern. What is going to happen? Sarah knelt beside him, forcing a brave smile. Ethan is strong, just like you, she whispered, squeezing his hand. But even as she said it, uncertainty gnawed at her. Just as the doctor was about to speak again, another commotion erupted outside the door. The tension in the air shifted like a storm brewing above them. Sarah's heart quickened, fear creeping in. What now? She thought, glancing toward the entryway. That's when Greg burst through, panic etched across his face. I just heard what is going on. His eyes darted back and forth as he took in the room's atmosphere, from the worried expressions to Ethan's fragile state. I just got word from the doctor that we might need to contact Henry, Clara said quickly, her voice rising with urgency. Is this about Ethan? Greg snapped, his protective instincts igniting. He hasn't been around. Why involve him now? Because he is Ethan's father. Sarah's voice rose, fueled by an energy she had forgotten she possessed. And whether you like it or not, Ethan needs both of us to do whatever it takes to help him. Her conviction sank into the room, heavy like a blanket of resolve. Sarah. Greg started, but the gentle shake of Clara's head silenced him. This isn't about us right now. It's about Ethan. And whatever is necessary for his care. Glimpses of understanding flickered in Greg's eyes, but uncertainty lingered still. It's a complicated situation, he said softly. What if Henry isn't the person you remember? What if he fails us again? Then I'll handle it, Sarah replied, the weight of her responsibility igniting her determination. For Ethan, I'll brave whatever it takes. As those words slipped from her lips, she felt a warmth spreading through her, enveloping her like a protective shield. Suddenly, the nurse swiftly entered the room, her gaze vacant but kind. "Ethan is stabilizing," she reported. "But we need you to decide quickly about involving his father. Time is precious." "Do it," Greg said firmly, eyes meeting Sarah's with a flash of solidarity. "Together, we can face whatever comes next." With that, the weight shifted. Sarah finally felt a door cracking open, allowing flickers of warmth through the cold shadows of doubt. She grasped the phone again, dialing Henry's number with shaky fingers, but this time, her heart held a sense of determination. "Hello?" Henry's familiar voice echoed through the speaker, a sound that sent chills down her spine. "Is everything okay?" "It's about Ethan," Sarah said, the urgency propelling her. "He's in critical condition, but there's still hope. We need your help." Silence met her words, and Sarah was ready to feel disappointment creep in once again. "But then I'll come," he said. "I'm on my way." As relief crashed over her, Greg and Clara stepped forward, their faces mirrors of solidarity. Because they all knew that one small decision might heal the fractures they defaced for too long. The waiting room suddenly felt more expansive, more nurturing. Hope fluttered, igniting in Sarah's chest like a flame that refused to be extinguished. They weren't just fighting for Ethan. They were forging a path towards a family, however unconventional, however messy. Ethan's steady beeping echoed like a heartbeat as Sarah turned to the others. "We'll get through this together," she promised, feeling the strength of unity wrap around them. "No matter how tangled it gets." And as they huddled close, awaiting the arrival of both an uncertain truth and a father, they realized family wasn't just about being perfect. It was about troubled paths, choices made, and the strength to keep pushing forward. Together, the moment took root, a promise, an unwavering hope for the future. But the journey isn't complete, it's just begun. And you can't miss the next chapter. You need to subscribe now to stay updated on everything. Hit that bell and join the family, leave a like to keep the momentum going, your support is crucial. Comment below how this twist made you feel, we want to hear your thoughts. And don't wait not even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this transformation. Your support matters now more than ever.